After 3 brilliant years as part of the Late Night Linux family, Linux Matters is becoming an independent podcast. We're incredibly grateful to Joe for his support in launching and producing the show. It wouldn't exist without him.
As Linux Matters has evolved, we've decided we want the creative freedom that being an independent production allows. You'll still find us at linuxmatters.sh with the same great content you'd expect.
But we'll no longer be appearing in the Late Night Linux Patreon, or their all episodes feed, or their YouTube channel. This is our last show as part of the Late Night Linux family. Thank you all for your support, and here's to the next chapter.
You may remember I used to have a newsletter, and it was called Popey's Newsletter, and then it was no more, and now I'm going to revive it again.
I hear it's what all the cool kids are doing these days.
Yes, and maybe even before I started it a year ago or more, however long ago it was I started it. The last post in the archive is 4th of October 2024, so it's nearly a year, well, over a year since the last post, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to have another go at this. And it was actually someone in the office that triggered me to go and have a look at it again. We've got an author, a journalist who works for us writing articles for our blog. And he only works for us part-time. And some of the other time he writes articles for other organizations. And he also has a newsletter, he told me. And I then rocked back in my chair and said, oh, I used to have a newsletter. Oh, when was that? Well, last year. And then I remembered that I'd shut it down in November time last year. I was having a bad time and I shut it down and I couldn't, it was just too much going on. So, I looked at it again and you may remember I was using a piece of software called ListMonk, M-O-N-K. And it's a single Go binary, open source, and it is pretty good. And they do updates, and there have been a bunch of updates since I last touched it.
So what's new and interesting?
Well, one thing that's new and interesting is they've added support for captchas, because it turns out when you put a public facing form on the internet that allows people to put an email address in, bots put email addresses in.
Yes.
And you end up with, well, in my case, you end up with a whole bunch of subscribers to your mailing list who are not genuine people, but also you get a whole load of emails going out from your system in order to get them to verify that the email address exists. And part of the byproduct of that, dear listener, is that it eats up all your allowance when there's lots of them.
Right.
So that wasn't good. So I shut it down again and forgot about it for a week or so. And then I thought, no, I'm going to sort this out. So I did a bit of digging around, and the support for captchas in ListMonk is okay. But actually, it turns out in the most recent version, I think they've removed it completely and they recommend not using it at all. And I found an issue in their GitHub where other people have had success with a completely different tool that's not a captcha, as in not one of those things where you have to do a puzzle. You don't have to identify bicycles or motorcycles or buses or crosswalks or whatever it is they make you look at.
I'm sure that's how, we've trained these AI models on how to do image analysis, us identifying bicycles and water hydrants.
It's actually real time. It's not training anything.
Yeah, there's somebody else on the other side of the world who's trying to log into something and you're helping them. No, what I've started using is Cloudflare Turnstile, which a few people have raved about. And I didn't realize I've actually seen it on other websites where they have a little Cloudflare banner and a little spinny thing, and then you're in. There's no puzzle for you to sort out. It's all algorithms or something. I don't know. But it's not that you actually have to actively do anything. It does something that, decides whether you're real or not. I don't fully know how it works, but then I never knew really how captchas work. So I'm no further forward or behind. So I've implemented that, which was surprisingly easy. It's as little as signing up and getting an API key at Cloudflare, telling it what domain you're going to put the thing on, and then in the HTML template, which ListMonk has the HTML templates, you could just edit and tweak to make the mailing list have whatever theme and style you want, but also you can tweak the JavaScript and whatever else is on the page. And so you just put this one line at the top, and then in the form that you want to protect, so the sign up page, you put another line, and your key is in there somewhere, or like half of your key is in there somewhere, and it works. I've enabled it, and so far, touch wood, fingers crossed, and all that kind of superstitious mumbo jumbo, not had any sign-ups since.
Just what you wanted.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Let me clarify that, Mark. Thank you. I've not had any dodgy sign-ups.
Right.
So yeah, that bit seems to be working. So I was a bit down about this when I first saw all these spammers, because I thought, golly, I've got 1,200 subscribers to my mailing list. And then you just see, and it's no, it's still the 500 it was before, but with an extra 700 random email addresses. And by the way, you've expired all of your email sends that you can possibly do. And also, double, by the way, the people you were using have now been bought by another company and you have to pay. There is no free tier. So I was using SendGrid, and now I'm using Twilio.
Right.
I had to merge my Twilio and SendGrid accounts and change API tokens, do all the DMARC stuff for the domain so I can do proper, good, sensible person validated emails. And I did all that, and that now works.
So does ListMonk have a selection of supported email sending providers?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's SMTP.
Okay.
And so there are APIs for some of these email sending services, and certainly Twilio has a web API, but they also have a, in inverted commas, legacy SMTP gateway. And you just put in the username and your special API key and SSL port and all that kind of stuff, and it can send mail.
So I've been through that SendGrid Twilio dance recently myself as well, and I moved a bunch of my transactional email services to, it's either Mailgun or MailJet. I think they're both the same organization that merged at some point. And for one of my projects, I have to pay because it's just too much. But for all my other little personal projects, their free tier is very generous, and I've just been able to use their free tier. So you might want to look at that in slow time.
Yes, I probably will look at other options. In fact, one of the things that ListMonk supports is multiple ways to send, because for people who are sending very high volumes, especially those where certain email sending providers are optimized for one particular target, or rather not optimized for one particular target. So, for example, one provider might be commonly blacklisted on Outlook, where another provider might be commonly blacklisted on Gmail. And so often you would have multiple listed in ListMonk, and then you can actually get it to filter and send some through one method and some through another method, and actually also rate limit how many it sends so that it doesn't trigger, problems at the other end. So that's something I had to play with and learn. And it's another, thing to educate myself, but it works. So far I've been able to send myself test emails. I had to go through as I mentioned just now, the DNS DMARC stuff so that it didn't say in the inbox, it doesn't get marked as spam for one thing. And secondly, it didn't show up as from Popia newsletters or whatever, brackets via SendGrid. It actually just says from Popia newsletters or whatever. Now, I haven't actually sent any yet. I've just been doing tests. The two things I need to decide now is what content's going to go in there. It used to be there were 3 sections: create, consume, comment, which was things I've created, things I've watched or listened to, and then, just freeform me rambling about something, and sometimes other sections as well. I need to decide whether I want to do that or something else, but I also need to decide the theme. And it was very fixed font, very need to know ntk.net, if you know, you know, and beta style newsletter. It's not very flashy looking. Maybe I'll change that. I don't know. We shall see.
Well, given it's been a year, I think you've got 24 podcast episodes in your create section. And I know you've written a bunch of software. I mean, Nerdy Day Trips has happened since then. So
this is true. I actually started writing a little script that would scrape GitHub and find all the commits I'd made in the last year. I thought, no, I'm not going to subject anyone to a robot output of all the things I've done. But it's something that I enjoy doing, and I'm going to think carefully about the format, the theme, and what I'm going to put in there, and then start sending them. So if people want to sign up to my newsletter, they can do, and look forward to new missives in your inbox. The link will be in the show notes. This episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/Linux Matters. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices and infrastructure together. It's the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. PCs and laptops, servers, cloud instances, 3D printers, network storage. Connect anything and everything you want, wherever it is, and get started in minutes. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, and you get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free with no credit card required. So support the show and go to tailscale.com/Linux Matters and try Tailscale out today. Or if you want to use Tailscale at an industrial scale with more users and devices, or take advantage of features like MDM policies, auditing, network flow logging, and priority support, try it out at work using the code Linux25. You'll get 3 free months of any Tailscale paid plan, and you can find out why thousands of companies like Instacart, Hugging Face, and Duolingo have switched to Tailscale. That's code Linux25.
A few episodes ago, I was lamenting my poor life choices, choosing a MacBook for work, and my friend in the IT department at work has done the business, and I had a Framework 16 turn up. So MacBook away, Framework 16 ahoy.
I have to say, I was in the office when you brought that in Basingstoke, and it was like flies round something smelly when you pulled that out. There were like nerds and nerd adjunct people coming over and having a look and going, "Oh, you've got to build it yourself. What's all this? It comes in bits," all that kind of stuff. It was jolly good fun.
It was good fun. Made more fun by the fact that I refused to look at any manuals.
Yes, and then you were like, well, where does this go? And where does this go? Where's my SSD? I think were some of the words you uttered.
Yeah, I did, because I didn't look through the box thoroughly enough. I didn't anticipate that I was going to have to build the thing, but that was all fun, right? It's like, Lego for grown-ups, isn't it? That sort of thing.
So you'll find Lego for grown-ups is Lego.
Well, that too. It's a different, all right, Meccano for
expensive Lego, expensive
exactly.
Lego. Sorry, carry on.
Anyway, it was lots of fun. I've put it all together. And of course, now I have to configure this thing for work. And work have a bunch of security policies about the devices that you use and how they're configured. And if you elect to use their Linux as your operating system, the first policy requirement is encrypted disks. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've been doing encrypted disks the same way since as long as I can remember I've been doing encrypted disks. I wonder if there's a different way to do encrypted disks that complies with our security policies.
You mean you've been doing encrypted disks in a way that works for a long time, and now you thought, I know, let's push the boat out and do something that maybe doesn't work?
No, I thought to myself, things must have changed in the intervening years. Let's go and research what's changed and what my options might be. And obviously, some of the options haven't changed. Like if you're using one of the sort of fully supported in the kernel Linux file systems that doesn't have native disk encryption, then Lux is where you get your encryption piece from. But what I was also trying to do was sort of simplify my disk encryption setup, because I've always found that having that LVM in the mix was kind of like an extra bit of faff that I didn't feel needed to be there. And I'm right about that, as it turns out. And only because a little while ago I talked about a project I created called Nothing But Nix that did all sorts of dastardly things in GitHub runners to create a massive Nix volume on the GitHub runner VMs. And I was using ButterFS in order to create that file system. So I'd learned something about the way that ButterFS can work across volumes to create like striped arrays of mismatched sizes. So I thought to myself, let's do some of that. So what I've actually ended up doing is just having an encryption strategy, which is Lux directly on the disks, to do the encryption piece, and then ButterFS directly over the top of those Lux volumes.
You're speaking in plurals here.
Yes.
Does that mean you've got 2 disks and you're doing some kind of, in inverted commas, RAID 1 or something?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I have 2 drives. I was provided one by work, but I had another one, and I thought, well, there's 2 slots in this here laptop, so let's have some fun. So there's a 1 terabyte SSD and a 2 terabyte SSD. And those both have a Lux volume created over the top of them of 1 and 2 terabytes each. And then the way that ButterFS works is you can just say, right, I'm going to create this volume, a ButterFS volume, and I'm going to create a bit of it here on this block device, which happens to be the Lux crypted device, and the other bit over here, which is on a different Lux crypted device on a different drive.
Of a different capacity.
And combining the capacity, so I now have a 3 terabyte ButterFS volume.
But I bet if you type DF, you don't see 3 terabytes, do you?
No, I see more than 3 terabytes, and we'll get to that in just a moment.
Brilliant. That part of ButterFS hasn't changed then, has it?
Well, no, this is for very good reason and very deliberate reasons. So one of the things I went poking around in Lux is I was thinking, right, I don't want to unnecessarily burn up CPU cycles on my machine with disk encryption. So what's the optimum way I can set up the crypt ciphers on the Lux volume so that they're all hardware accelerated, they meet the policy requirements, but they don't do any more than the policy requirements. So in the show notes, you will find the extra flags I have used for Lux in order to create, government standard encryption that is all FIPS compliant and all that good stuff, but is not over compensated. So it's not to say it's a performance optimization, but it doesn't hit the CPU as hard. But that said, all of these encryption algorithms, most of them are hardware accelerated in modern CPUs over the last decade, so you don't get too much of a penalty. There is some, but it's not like it was 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you put these settings? When you're doing this install,
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall there ever being an Ubuntu desktop setting anywhere where you could put in all your Lux settings or your ButterFS settings. I feel like you're doing some voodoo and not using the Ubuntu desktop installer.
Yes, I'm not using Ubuntu. I'm using NixOS and a project in the Nix community ecosystem called Disco. And Disco is a way to declaratively define your disk partitions and file systems and all of that stuff. So in my Nix configuration, there is a piece that says, create this Lux volume, and here are the flags that you need to use in order to create the volume.
Do you ever feel the need when you do this declarative stuff to talk to your computer and go, I do declare that I would like ButterFS? Or is that just me?
Well, I've been talking to my computer recently. Maybe that'll be a topic for a future episode. Quite a lot of chit chat going on there. And weirdly, it's your voice that comes back at me. So, and apparently I've got quantum safe encryption, and it's all hardware optimized on my Lux volume. So at this point, we're then going to introduce ButterFS, and we're going to create this joined volume over the top. And ButterFS has got a couple of features that I was really interested in. And most specifically is that it has native compression. Now, you could think, well, if I compress my file system, that's going to eat up gobs of CPU resources. And it's true. If you use compression, there is going to be a CPU hit, but there are different compression algorithms and strengths of compression that can be applied. And I did a bit of benchmarking, and long story short, if you've got NVMe SSDs, so the PCI Express ones as opposed to the SATA connected ones, if you use the LZO compression, it's fast as business. It's really, really quick. It doesn't have too much sort of CPU overhead. And what you do lose in terms of CPU overhead, you gain in I/O throughput, because you're actually reading and writing fewer bits on and off the disk, which of course we now have optimized backing for the compression piece. So this is why it doesn't report 3 terabytes. It actually reports about 3.4 terabytes because we've got this compression layer on top. And that will, vary and shift over time. But I've also got the flags that I've used in order to compress in an optimized way my ButterFS volume that goes over the top.
Can I just clarify the reason you're using ButterFS is not just to be contrarian for all the ZFS flunkies that are out there? Or is that just part of it?
Yeah, maybe there's a bit of that.
Yeah. I
like the fact that ButterFS is natively in the kernel. I don't have to worry about the kernel getting out of step with the implementation of ZFS. Now, there are some controls in NixOS to prevent that from happening, but, I like the fact that ButterFS is an in-kernel file system. And I also like this feature of being able to concatenate mismatched drive sizes, because in a laptop, that's going to be a common occurrence, right? So I really kind of liked that. And I like the fact it's got native compression and all the rest of it. So I'm very happy with this setup. It is nice and quick. I have a passphrase that I have to enter in order to unlock it. I've also experimented with using my YubiKey as the mechanism by which it unlocks. I need to do more research there, because what I have to do there is it actually needs to unlock each drive, because it was enrolled with like 2 different touches of the device, and because they rotate, it can't use the one it just used to unlock it, because they've changed, all that sort of nonsense.
Can you get 2 keys, put one on each side, and do the war games thing? Turn the key, sir.
I suppose would that work? I don't know. Maybe. So I'm looking into doing the YubiKey thing in a bit more of an exotic way. And the other thing I experimented with, which was kind of fun, but also massively impractical for a laptop, is I've got a Stream Deck, one of those push button things that you use for switching scenes in OBS, but I've got the mini one with just 6 buttons. So with a little bit of init RAM disk magic, I loaded the UDEV rules to identify that device and put a simple program in with a 6-digit layout. And when it asks you to unlock, you can actually type in a 6-digit pin on the Stream Deck in order to unlock the drives, which not practical for a laptop, but I might be doing that for my server downstairs in the garage, because I thought that would be a much more fun way to unlock disks on a server.
We love to get your feedback via email, show@linuxmatters.sh, or you can chat with us and other listeners in our Telegram group. All the details are at linuxmatters.sh/contact. I have been testing out a new tool for Moodle development.
Okay. Does that mean a new IDE?
Well, no. It's part of an existing IDE, let's say. So the main IDE I use for Moodle development is PHP Storm, which is the JetBrains IDE based on IntelliJ IDEA, but with extra bits for working with PHP projects. And it's very good, but most IDEs have support for common frameworks and content management systems like WordPress and Drupal and Laravel and the other big PHP things. But because Moodle's a bit more of a niche product than those, they don't tend to have particular support for working inside a Moodle code base.
Right.
But fortunately, there exists a project called MDL Code for doing just this. But up until recently, it's only existed for VS Code.
Ah. Is it a group of extensions for code?
It's actually just one extension
that
you install, and it has a bunch of features that support Moodle development. So it does things like it has a load of templates for the different kinds of plugins you can do in Moodle. And also within each plugin, it knows the kind of common files that exist for doing things like, this is the file where you define your user permissions, and this is the file where you define your database tables. And so you can say, give me one of those files, and it will give it to you with all of the right bits sort of pre-filled and ready for you to hack on. But the other really nice thing it does, which is something that's always bugged me, is it helps you out with language strings. So normally when you put a language string in Moodle somewhere in the interface, you want some text, you put in an identifier for the string and the component of the system it comes from. And then in another file, you have to define that string. And what always happens is you mistype it somewhere. You either get the component wrong or you get the name of the string wrong. And then it's not until you actually load up the page and then you get a bunch of errors appearing and a bunch of placeholders and you think, oh, where have I gone wrong? But what MDL code will do is as you're typing, it will say, aha, I know which component you said that string's from. I know where the file for those strings are, and I'm going to tell you whether that string exists yet or not.
So is this some kind of language server specific to Moodle that it's got?
No, it kind of hooks into the stuff in PHP Storm as far as I'm aware. Now, this is the bit I love about this, because I went and tried to make this a while ago.
That's desperate.
I found the process of making IntelliJ plugins and PHP Storm plugins in particular completely inscrutable. The documentation is minimal. The examples are non-existent. And while I sort of understand the things that are there under the hood that you're supposed to be able to use, I've got no idea how any of them work. But fortunately, there is a much smarter developer in the Moodle community than I, called Marina, who has been working on this and has managed to take the code that she wrote for VS Code and go to PHP Storm and basically rewrite the same functionality. Well, she's still working on it. It's a work in progress. But I've just been using it this week to generate a plugin skeleton and use all of its features that it's got so far to speed up and ease my development process a bit. And I've been very happy.
Is there no way, I mean, this is like separate to that tool, which seems like it solves the problem for you. Is there no way for you to like be able to type the string in like hello or like button 1 or whatever it is, and it do the magic of like find the file it should be in and just do that and then put a placeholder in there? Or do you have to put a variable in there and then go and find the file under normal circumstances? This is just normal PHP, is it?
Well, so the way that it works in Moodle is you either have a function called getString or an object called langString, which will lazy load it. But that's basically how you do it. There's no, well, you could presumably write a different thing, which you type a string and you say, turn this into a langString, and it does it that way.
Right.
Maybe I'll suggest that as a feature.
I've always found this like language internationalization stuff like hard.
Yes.
Because it's, you know, you're having to maintain not just the text that's in there, but the variable that means that piece of text. And then you got to balance 2 plates, like for every commit.
Yes.
That feels like I would forget as well.
Yes. Quite often when I'm debugging something and I want to know where the code is that's generating the error, what I'll do is find the langString on the web page, and then I'll search the code base for that text, and then I'll find the file the string's defined in, and then I'll find the identifier for that string, and then I'll search for where that string's used in the code.
A common lament.
And then eventually, yes.
You've just described, I think, the answer to the question I had in mind, which is what's the quality of life improvement that you're experiencing with this? But I think that adequately describes it. Is there anything else that has made you give you the warm and fuzzies about this new discovery?
It's amazing how much this relates to langstrings. It also does the same thing for database tables, I should say. So if you're writing a query and you put in a database table, but there's nothing in the code to define that database table, that shows up in red. But also when you're adding a new langstring, the convention is that everything's supposed to be sorted alphabetically in each file, which of course, historically, they never are. Mm-hmm. And then you think, oh, well, now they're not in the right order. Should I put one where it should be? Or, but yeah, there is a plus button, which will put it in the right place.
Nice.
Are you going to be that guy that files those pull requests, which is chore, order alphabetically?
One day, maybe.